My parents abandoned my 6-year-old son because I refused to lend my asshole brother $30,000. I never thought my parents would use my own son to teach me a lesson. I was folding Thomas's pajamas when the phone vibrated on the counter. A single line from my mother popped up on the screen. Remember, whoever doesn't help the family is no longer family. My stomach twisted, not from surprise, but from recognition. I'd lived in that twisted truth my entire life. Even when I was little, I understood the currency of love in our home was obedience. To them, and most importantly, to Ethan. My brother was the gravitational pull everything orbited around. When he scraped his knee, the house paused. When I won the regional spelling bee, my mom looked up from her grocery list just long enough to say, "Don't let it get to your head." I was 12 the first time I realized I was alone in that house, even with 3 other people. I had perfect grades, helped around the house, never complained. But all it took was Ethan's D in algebra to spark a family crisis. "He's trying," Mom said, wrapping her arm around him like he'd just come back from war. "You're naturally gifted, Miranda. He's the one who needs our support." By high school, I stopped waiting for applause. I poured my energy into scholarships, part-time jobs, and silence. Love became something I didn't expect. Respect? A laughable luxury. Now, at 32, I've built a quiet life that makes sense. I run a modest design studio from home, raise my son with more love than I thought I was capable of, and manage the constant emotional fallout of being the strong one in the family. Thomas, bright-eyed, kind, and innocent, is everything I never had. And maybe deep down, that's what they resent most. The doorbell rang. My heart sank even before I saw who it was. Ethan stood there in a fitted blazer he couldn't possibly afford, grinning like he hadn't avoided my calls for the past 6 months. "Hey, sis," he said, arms open like we were close. "Hi," I replied flatly, stepping aside. "What brings you here?" "I was in the neighborhood," he lied. "Figured I'd drop by, see my favorite nephew." Thomas appeared from behind me with a cautious smile. "This isn't a beggar. This is an investment opportunity. And you're the first person I thought of." Ethan's voice echoed too confidently in my kitchen as he slid his sleek phone across the counter. A bright chart pulsed on the screen, full of rising lines and crypto jargon that looked like pure noise to me. "Secure coin," he said, like it meant something. "It's about to blow up. I mean, explode. Double or triple your money in 6 months. Maybe less." Outside, the rain streaked sideways across the windows. I tightened my cardigan, glanced at the clock. Thomas wouldn't be out of school for another 2 hours. If this went bad, at least he wouldn't see it. "I just need 30 grand, Ethan continued, tapping the screen like he was already spending it. "That's the buy-in. I've got insider access. Pre-listing. That's why I came to you first." "I don't have that kind of money lying around," I said evenly. "Sure you do." He grinned. "You've got that studio business. Life insurance from Robert. You're always good with savings. Come on, sis, this isn't a gift. I'll pay you back with interest. 50 grand, I swear." I crossed my arms. "And what happens when Secure Coin vanishes like your food truck? Or that wellness app? Or the house flip that never flipped?" He blinked like I'd slapped him. "Wow, you don't have to throw my past in my face." "I'm not throwing it. I'm reminding you." I kept my tone steady. "Every time you pitch a miracle, it becomes my mess to clean up. Or mom and dad's." "This is different," he snapped, the mask starting to slip. "This is guaranteed." "Nothing in crypto is guaranteed. Hell, nothing in life is." He stood, pacing like a cornered animal. "You think you're better than me, don't you? With your neat little house and your stupid perfect kid. Leave Thomas out of this. You act like you're some saint, but you're selfish, Miranda. Always have been." "I'm selfish?" I scoffed. "You're the one asking for $30,000 you can't repay." He slammed his hands on the counter. "You'll learn that no one will come back to save a selfish person." The words sliced cleanly, not because they were true, but because I recognized them. They weren't his. That was Mom's language. Dad's tone. This wasn't just Ethan. The whole family had drafted him into their little war. He whipped out his phone and called someone. "Yeah, it's me." She said no. "Yeah, I told her everything. She's not budging." He paused. "She needs to learn." I didn't ask who was on the other end. I already knew. He left without another word. The front door closed softly behind him, which somehow felt more menacing than a slam. I poured myself tea with shaking hands. The quiet in the house suddenly felt like a warning. That night, the phone rang again. I recognized the number instantly. "Miranda." My mother's voice was ice. "You better be prepared for the consequences." When I arrived at Thomas's school, the playground was empty. The only boy I loved wasn't there. Panic didn't creep in. It slammed into me. The dismissal bell had rung 20 minutes ago. The usual bustle of parents and children had vanished. Even the crossing guard was packing up, waving goodbye to the last few stragglers. But there was no sign of Thomas. I rushed to the front office, voice already shaking. "I'm here for Thomas Anderson. He's in second grade. I was supposed to pick him up today." The secretary blinked, confused. "Oh, he was already picked up. Earlier this afternoon." "Picked up?" I choked. "By who?" She quickly scanned a clipboard. "Grandparents. Their names matched the family authorization form on file." A cold weight dropped in my stomach. "I didn't send anyone," I whispered. "They didn't even call me." "Maybe there was an emergency?" She offered hesitantly. "One of the teachers saw them. Miss Wilson, I think." I found Brenda Wilson near the staff parking lot, zipping her coat against the cold drizzle. "Miss Wilson," I called out, breathless. "You saw someone pick up Thomas?" "Yes, I think it was your mother," she said. "She said there was a family situation. She signed the form. I'm so sorry. Was something wrong?" I could barely nod. My heart was thudding too loud to speak. As soon as I was in my car, I called my mother, straight to voicemail. My father, voicemail. Ethan. No answer. I drove straight to their house. Empty. Lights off. No cars in the driveway. The ache in my chest turned into a roar in my ears. I called hospitals, friends, even Ethan's last girlfriend. Nothing. When the phone rang again, it was an unfamiliar number. My hands trembled as I answered. "Hello? Mrs. Anderson?" A calm male voice said, "This is Father Michael from St. Augustine's Church. I believe I have your son here." The church was 20 minutes away, but it felt like a lifetime. I sped through yellow lights, hands clenched on the wheel, rehearsing worst-case scenarios I didn't want to believe. When I finally burst through the church doors, the first thing I saw was Thomas, sitting quietly in a small office, holding a hot chocolate in both hands. A gentle-looking priest sat nearby, and a volunteer offered him a cookie. "Mommy," he cried, running straight into my arms. I dropped to my knees and clutched him. "Oh my God, baby, are you okay? Are you hurt?" "I'm okay." He sniffled. "But Grandma and Grandpa said you didn't want me anymore. They said I had to stay here until you learned your lesson." I froze. Father Michael knelt beside me. "They left him on the front steps about 2 hours ago with a backpack and a note. I found your contact info inside. I called the police before I called you." He handed me the note. My hands shook as I read it. "Maybe this will teach you how to be a mother who supports her family." The officer arrived not long after. A woman named Diana Murray. Kind eyes, firm voice. She took our statements patiently. When I finished explaining, she leaned back in her chair, pen paused above her notepad. "So, your parents took your son without your knowledge, told him he was no longer wanted, and left him unattended at a church, as retaliation for not giving your brother money?" she asked evenly. I couldn't answer. I just nodded, blinking back the tears that refused to stop. She looked at Thomas, then at me. "Did you ever think your parents would do this?" My son's backpack contained a set of clothes, a carton of milk, and a threatening handwritten note. The bag sat on the counter at the police station, half-zipped, its childish dinosaur print already burned into my memory. Inside, next to the change of socks and a toothbrush, was the folded note, written in my mother's sharp, familiar cursive. I handed it over without a word. Officer Diana Murray scanned it quickly, her jaw tightening. "We'll file this under evidence," she said, slipping the note into a plastic sleeve. "What they've done is beyond unacceptable. This is child abandonment. And it carries weight, Miranda." I sat upright in the hard plastic chair, still feeling like I was floating outside of myself. I kept thinking, they wouldn't really do it. They were bluffing. I mean, who uses a child like that? She looked at me with something between pity and steel. People who think they're above the law, but they're not. We spent the next 40 minutes detailing every event: the argument over Ethan's loan, the threats, the pickup from school without permission, the church, the note. Thomas sat beside me, leaning heavily into my side, unusually quiet. Diana filled out an official incident report, signed it, and slid it into a manila folder labeled Anderson Thomas Abandonment Case. "They will not get away with it," she said firmly. "This is no longer a family matter. This is a crime." I nodded slowly, as if my body needed a few seconds to catch up with the meaning of her words. Finally, someone was calling it what it was. Back at home, the living room was cloaked in dim silence. I hadn't turned on the lights. The soft hum of the refrigerator was the only sound, save for Thomas's breathing as he curled beside me on the couch. "I don't want to sleep alone," he whispered. "You won't," I said, brushing his hair back. "Not tonight. Not any night you don't want to." He paused, eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling. "Did I do something wrong?" The question shattered me. No, baby. You did nothing wrong." His lips trembled. "Then why did Grandma say you didn't want me?" I couldn't answer right away. I just pulled him tighter. Because sometimes grown-ups say horrible things when they're trying to hurt someone else. But it has nothing to do with you. We fell asleep on the couch, or rather, Thomas did. I lay awake, staring into the darkness, one hand resting protectively on his back, the other gripping my phone like a lifeline. Sometime past midnight, I opened Facebook out of habit. I needed distraction, anything to keep the walls from closing in, but the page wouldn't load. Error. I tried again. Still nothing. Then I checked my messages. Nothing from my mother, nothing from my father, nothing from Ethan. Then I saw it. The last notification I hadn't noticed earlier. "You have been blocked by this user." It was my mother. And when I searched, I saw the same with Ethan, my father, even my cousins. And one final message from Mom sent hours before the block. "You cut yourself off. Don't come crawling back." The screen blurred. My fingers trembled. So this was it. Not just abandonment of my son. They had abandoned me too. No one in my extended family asked if Thomas was okay. They just asked why I dared to call the police. The messages began trickling in late that afternoon. At first, I thought maybe someone was checking on us. Hope has a cruel way of reviving itself in quiet moments. But when I opened the first email, from Aunt Margaret of all people, the words hit like an open-handed slap. "I heard what you did. Calling the police on your own parents? That's beyond disrespectful." I blinked, rereading it twice. Then 3 more messages came in rapid fire. "Miranda, you've always been dramatic. The boy was fine. He was safe. Stop trying to destroy this family." "Uncle Rob, your parents raised you, and this is how you repay them? What kind of daughter are you?" "Cousin Kelly, you should have worked it out privately. Family is for forgiveness." That one made my stomach turn. Family is for forgiveness. Spoken so easily by people who never once acknowledged the wounds they caused, who had never offered an ounce of accountability. I thought of every Christmas where I was the one expected to clean up while Ethan received applause for showing up. Every Thanksgiving where they praised his potential while asking me when I'd finally settle down. I dropped my phone on the counter and turned to the stove. The pot was boiling over, sauce hissing on the burner. I stirred it too quickly, splashing hot liquid on my hand. The sting was sharp, but not enough to distract me from the burning in my chest. The front door creaked open. "Miranda?" Alicia's voice was soft. I didn't turn around. She walked into the kitchen and froze when she saw me. I must have been a sight. One hand red from the burn, the other holding a spoon midair, eyes glossed over, lip trembling. The kitchen light caught the tears already spilling. She didn't ask. She just walked over, wrapped her arms around me from behind, and held me. I sobbed into her shoulder. "I've kept quiet for 30 years. I choked. For the sake of peace. For the sake of being the good daughter. The stable one. But now they've dragged Thomas into it. My baby." Alicia pulled back, looked me in the eyes. Fierce. "You're not crazy. They're toxic. And you're doing what a mother should do. You're protecting your son." I clung to her words like a life preserver. Because I was drowning in the silence, the guilt, the accusations. And her voice was the first that felt like air. Later that night, while Alicia helped put Thomas to bed, I sat on the couch and stared at my phone again. Another message had arrived. This time it wasn't from a relative. It was Officer Diana. "I need you and Thomas to meet with Child Protection tomorrow morning." They didn't just abandon my son. They made up a story that I was mentally unstable. The walls of the Children's Services office were painted a pale blue, but the color did little to soften the sterility of the room. A small table stood between me and the social worker, with a tub of broken crayons and worn coloring books off to the side. Thomas sat beside me, his little hand clutched around mine like I was the last safe thing in his world. Rebecca Martinez looked up from her clipboard, her dark hair neatly tied back, eyes unreadable behind thin-framed glasses. She wasn't hostile, but she wasn't friendly either. Just focused, professional. "We're here to evaluate Thomas's emotional well-being," she began, voice even, "and to ensure his environment remains safe moving forward. This isn't about judgment. It's about protection." I nodded, not trusting my voice. "Thomas," she said gently, leaning toward him, "do you feel safe with your mommy?" He nodded immediately, then tightened his grip on my hand. "Yes, I only feel safe with her." Rebecca gave a small smile, then handed him a piece of paper and a red crayon. "Can you draw me something that shows how you felt this week?" Thomas glanced at me, then lowered his head and began scribbling. While he drew, Rebecca turned to me. "Mrs. Anderson, I need to ask some questions about your background, your support system. Any mental health history we should be aware of?" My jaw clenched. No history, no medications, no episodes. I run a business, I raise my son alone, and I've never once put him in harm's way. She nodded but didn't write anything yet. "We received a phone call," she said after a pause. "An anonymous report suggesting you're unstable, that you might have hallucinated what happened." I stared at her. "They're trying to discredit me?" She didn't answer directly. It happens, especially in family disputes. That's why documentation matters. I opened my purse and slid a printed email across the table. This came from my mother. The subject line was blank. The body reads, "If you'd helped your brother, none of this would have happened. Remember that." Rebecca read it slowly. "This is helpful," she said, then turned to Thomas. He was done. He held up his picture, a child in a blue shirt standing alone under a tree, and a red car with 2 adult figures driving away. One of the figures had gray hair and was pushing the child out of the back seat. "That's me," Thomas whispered. "And Grandma said I had to wait there until Mommy stopped being selfish." My chest tightened. Rebecca didn't say anything for a long moment. Then she looked at me. "We will protect your son, Mrs. Anderson, but you need to fight clearly. This will not be easy." I swallowed, voice barely above a whisper. "I'm ready." She nodded, slipping the drawing and the email into her folder. They are trying to make you unstable to reduce their culpability, she said, eyes locking with mine. Don't let them take control of the narrative. She stood, gathering her papers. One more thing, she added, handing me a card. I recommend you find a lawyer and a psychiatrist for Thomas. It's just the beginning. If they dare to abandon my child, I dare to drag them to court. The brass nameplate on the door read, Patricia Hernandez, Esquire. Family law. It gleamed under the soft hallway lights, a subtle reassurance that maybe, just maybe, I wasn't insane for fighting this. I pushed open the glass door into a modest office. Hardwood floors, a worn leather couch, and neatly stacked legal books lining the shelves. Patricia stood as I entered, her handshake firm, gaze steady. A woman in her early 50s with graying hair pulled into a low bun and a sharp navy blazer. She looked like someone who'd seen everything and survived it. Miranda, she said, gesturing for me to sit. Let's start from the beginning. I told her everything. About Ethan's so-called investment scheme, the $30,000 demand, my refusal. About the text messages, the cold silence from my parents. About Thomas's disappearance, the church, the note, the investigation. I handed her a folder, printouts, screenshots, the email from my mother, a copy of the drawing Thomas gave the social worker. Patricia flipped through it, her expression unreadable, lips occasionally tightening. When I finished, she closed the folder and looked at me over the rim of her glasses. There are grounds to press charges for child abandonment and emotional endangerment, she said evenly. If we can prove premeditation, and that note helps, we're talking potential jail time. My stomach turned. Jail. My parents. I don't want revenge, I said softly. I just want to protect my son. You are, she replied firmly. But protection sometimes looks like confrontation. You're not just shielding Thomas from future harm. You're teaching him that what happened was wrong, and that it has consequences. Her words lingered in the silence. I'll need you to authorize representation, she added, sliding a form across the desk. Once you sign, I'll begin the process. My hand hovered over the pen. I could still see Thomas's face that night, trembling under the covers, whispering, Did I do something wrong? I picked up the pen and signed. I choose to act. Patricia gave a small nod. We'll proceed carefully, and you won't be alone. As I stepped back into the hallway, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number lit up the screen. You think dragging your whole family to court is a good idea? You'll regret it. I used to think Ethan was useless. I didn't expect him to be dangerous. The house was dark, save for the faint blue glow of my laptop screen. Thomas had finally drifted off after another nightmare. I should have been sleeping too, but instead I sat on the couch, scrolling through the digital footprints my brother had left behind. I clicked open an old email from Ethan. Subject line, Trust me, sis. Attached was a link to the secure coin site, which I'd visited before. But this time I scrolled deeper. Embedded in the email, almost buried in the signature block, was a voice memo I hadn't noticed before. I hesitated, then hit play. Ethan's voice came through, cocky and fast-talking. As long as you invest, I'll level up. That's how the tiers work, bro. My sister's soft. She'll fold. Just give me time. She'll bring the big bucks. I froze. He hadn't sent this to me directly. It must have been part of a forwarded chain. His mistake. My window. Just then, a small rustle. Thomas padded into the room, holding his drawing pad and a marker. Can't sleep, he whispered. I pulled him onto my lap, kissed the top of his head. Want to draw a new picture? I asked, needing distraction. He nodded and began doodling. A house. A man with big glasses. A $sign. Who's that? I asked, pointing. Uncle Ethan, Thomas said. He said you were going to make the whole family rich. My breath caught. What do you mean, sweetie? He told me once when we were in the car. Said Mommy was the golden goose, just didn't know it yet. Golden goose. I swallowed hard, tears burning behind my eyes. This wasn't just manipulation, it was strategy. Ethan had used my son, my grief, to bait me. And if I had said yes, I'd be roped into whatever scam he was part of. I transferred the audio file to a folder, added screenshots of the email trail, and typed out a summary of Thomas's comment. Then I sent everything to Patricia. 10 minutes later, her reply came through, "We need to turn this over to the FBI. This isn't just a family affair. This is an organized scam. Families don't sue each other. That saying is only true for those who don't leave their children at church." Patricia slid the final sheet across the polished desk. The legal language blurred slightly as I stared at the top line. Plaintiff, Miranda Anderson. Defendants, Gerald and Nancy Johnson. I could still feel the weight of the pen from when I signed the complaint earlier that morning. It was done. Official. Irrevocable. Patricia's assistant handed me a sealed envelope, court date stamped in red on the front. I held it with both hands as though it might catch fire. "You okay?" Patricia asked quietly. I nodded, though the pit in my stomach didn't. Outside, the late afternoon sun tried to warm the icy bite of early spring. I walked 2 blocks to the small neighborhood park where Thomas had first learned to ride a bike. The playground hadn't changed. Same chipped blue swings, same old bench under the elm tree. I sat, envelope still in hand, the seal pressing against my palm like a brand. I closed my eyes, remembering the day Thomas took his first wobbly steps across my living room floor. My mother had come by unannounced, bearing a casserole and that signature sharp smile. "Well, at least he's fast. That'll come in handy when he runs from your bad cooking," she'd joked. And I'd laughed, because back then I still believed teasing was affection. "Mommy?" I looked down. Thomas stood by the bench, a half-eaten granola bar in his hand. "Do you love Grandma and Grandpa?" he asked. The question hit me like a falling brick. I opened my mouth, closed it, then answered as steadily as I could. "I love them very much," I said. "But loving someone doesn't mean letting them hurt you." He nodded slowly, as if filing that away. Later, back at home, I sat on the couch while Thomas played with Legos in the next room. My phone buzzed on the armrest. Unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. A voice I hadn't heard in weeks, slick and sharp. "Do you know who you just declared war on?" Ethan asked, the venom wrapped in false calm. I didn't reply. I just hung up, heart pounding, fingers trembling. But my grip on the envelope never wavered. I never imagined that I would have to stand face to face with my parents in court. The courtroom smelled like paper and antiseptic. Overhead, fluorescent lights buzzed softly, casting a cold hue on the polished floor. I adjusted the sleeves of my blazer and kept my eyes forward, trying not to notice my parents seated only 10 feet away, on the opposite side. Patricia stood beside me, calm and unreadable as ever. "Focus on Thomas," she whispered before the judge entered. "Nothing else matters today." "Please rise," the clerk announced. The judge, a middle-aged woman with silver hair pulled tight into a bun, took her seat. My heart pounded as she opened the docket. Case number 11, FC 3452. Miranda Anderson versus Gerald and Nancy Johnson. Allegation, child abandonment and emotional endangerment. My father sat stiffly, jaw clenched. My mother, her eyes were on me. But they were not soft, not questioning. They were hard and resentful. Opposing counsel began with polished pity. "Your Honor, we acknowledge that leaving young Thomas at the church was not the best choice. But this act stemmed from concern. Our clients believed their daughter was experiencing a mental health crisis and were protecting the child from escalating stress." I stared at him in disbelief. Patricia stood without hesitation. "We will submit an audio recording in which the defendants referred to Thomas as a pawn and stated Miranda needed to learn her place. Additionally, we have testimony from Father Michael, who received the child and reported the event immediately to the police." Gasps echoed faintly. My eyes drifted toward Ethan, seated near the back. He leaned forward, arms crossed, smirking when Patricia mentioned his name, as if he were proud to be part of the chaos. The judge scribbled notes, nodded. Due to the seriousness of the allegations and in light of preliminary evidence, this court will proceed with further investigation. A child advocate will be assigned. The gavel struck, and the air felt heavier. I turned to leave, but my mother's voice stopped me. "You won't stop until you destroy everything, will you?" She hissed, just loud enough for me to hear. I didn't look back. Outside, I walked to the steps, sucking in a shaky breath. That's when I saw Ethan, under a tree near the parking lot, talking to a man I didn't recognize. In his hand, a thick envelope. He glanced around quickly before passing it over. My stomach tightened. This wasn't over. Not even close. It's not just a family dispute. Someone is controlling from the shadows. I sat at my desk in the dim glow of my office's desk lamp, Thomas asleep at home under Alicia's watch. Rain tapped softly against the window panes, a sound I usually found calming. Tonight, it only heightened my anxiety. My laptop screen lit up with the still frame from the courthouse security footage I'd pulled using Alicia's access to a private investigator friend. The image showed Ethan, standing under a tree, handing off an envelope to a man in a gray trench coat. I paused, zoomed in, and froze the license plate of the nearby car. Alicia. I whispered into the phone. "Can you run this plate?" Less than an hour later, her text came back with a name. Daniel Cross. A man who, according to public records, had been investigated 3 times for orchestrating fraudulent crypto investments. One of those schemes, SecureCoin, was flagged in an SEC advisory just 6 months ago. I sat back, pulse quickening. Ethan wasn't just chasing another bad investment. He was actively colluding. By morning, I'd pulled surveillance footage from the cafe across from the courthouse. The manager didn't ask questions when I showed him my court badge and a polite smile. I reviewed the video, heart sinking. Ethan wasn't just passing money. He was handing over documents. The man flipped through a packet as Ethan gestured, talking animatedly. At one point, he held up a piece of paper and tapped it. Clearly a list. I froze the screen, enhanced the image, and printed it. That night back at the office, I stared at the grainy printout. The names were clear. Gerald Johnson, Nancy Johnson, Miranda Anderson. Several cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. Aunts, uncles, all listed under Tier 1 investment targets. They weren't family anymore. They were bait. Patricia had warned me. If you find anything illegal, send it directly to the Bureau. With shaking fingers, I scanned and forwarded everything to the FBI contact Patricia had connected me with. Subject line, potential financial fraud, SecureCoin, urgent. I pressed send. I didn't breathe until the confirmation bounced back. Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Don't interfere any further. You don't know what you're getting into. I stared at the message, heart pounding. The shadows were moving now, no longer hiding. She thinks she's smarter than everyone. But the truth is, she's right. The words weren't said with admiration. They came from a voice half shattered by defeat, half weighed down by years of bad choices. Rain splashed softly against the windows of the lakeside cafe. A gentle gray light filtered through the clouds, casting a dim glow across the empty tables. Miranda sat by the window, fingers clenched around a lukewarm mug of tea she hadn't touched. She didn't need warmth right now. She needed clarity. Proof. And most of all, she needed answers. She had arrived early, her phone's recorder app already running inside her bag, just in case. When Gerald shuffled in, shoulders hunched and coat soaked through, he looked more like a man escaping a shelter than the father who once stood tall in the front row of every school recital, only to applaud Ethan harder. He spotted her and walked over, not meeting her eyes until he sat. "Thank you for coming." "I didn't come for you," Miranda said quietly. "I came for the truth." Gerald exhaled slowly, his breath fogging the air. "I owe you more than truth." He hesitated, then placed his weathered hands on the table. We lost the house. Your mother is staying with her cousin in Rockford. The bank repossessed everything. Miranda said nothing. She won't admit it, he continued. But she's broken. And me, I've been a coward. I knew what Ethan was doing. I watched it all unfold. The fake charts, the big promises. I even signed the mortgage papers. He swallowed. He said if I didn't keep quiet, I'd regret it. That he had friends, whatever that means. Miranda's heart pounded louder than the rain. And you still helped him? Gerald's voice cracked. He's my son too. But you left my son. Alone. In a church. His face contorted, and for the first time in her life, she saw it. Regret. Real, raw, and unfiltered. If I could go back, he whispered, trembling. I wouldn't let him touch him. I wouldn't have picked him up from that school. I would have said no. Miranda blinked back a flood of emotions. But you didn't. He nodded, shame heavy in every wrinkle. And I can't fix that. But maybe this can help. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small black USB drive. It's a call recording. Ethan talking to some guy he called the closer. He was bragging about scamming investors, about getting you to fold. Miranda stared at the object. It looked so ordinary, just plastic and metal. But it pulsed with possibility. Gerald pushed it across the table. Use it, before it's too late. I didn't expect the biggest evidence to come from the man I used to call father. Miranda sat across from Patricia in the dim office, the walls lined with case files and thick legal texts. Rain streaked the windows just as it had the day Gerald slid the USB across the cafe table. Its shell was still slightly damp. But it wasn't the plastic that mattered. It was what lay inside. Let's find out what kind of fire he handed you, Patricia murmured, plugging the drive into her encrypted laptop. The room went silent as the file loaded. A single audio recording? No name, no timestamp. Just a .wav file titled Call 1. Miranda's heart kicked against her ribs. The audio crackled, then steadied. Ethan's voice, unmistakable and arrogant. Trust me, I've already got the old man and my mom on the hook. They think it's their last chance to help me. I made sure they remortgaged before asking Miranda. She's the real target. I get her in, we hit the next commission bracket. Then another voice, deeper, slicker. She's a designer, right? You think she's got the cash? She's soft, Ethan replied. She's all about her kid. I'll make it sound like it's for Thomas's future. Pull the family guilt card. If she bites, that's $30,000. Minimum. Patricia paused the recording. Her face had hardened, lips thin. That's not investment talk, she said. That's fraud, exploitation, and manipulation of vulnerable family members. Miranda swallowed. It's enough? Patricia nodded and reached for her phone. More than enough. She called Agent Reynolds, keeping the speakerphone on as a precaution. This is Patricia Hernandez, attorney for Miranda Anderson. We've just verified a recording, originating from a confidential source, of Ethan Johnson discussing deliberate financial deception tied to the secure coin scam. I'm transmitting it now through the secure channel you provided. Received, Agent Reynolds replied calmly. We'll process it immediately. If it's authentic, it could tip the case toward conspiracy and organized fraud. Miranda leaned forward. Can you keep the source anonymous? A pause. I can't promise forever, Reynolds said. But for now, yes. Protecting your father from retaliation is a priority. Patricia ended the call and closed the laptop. For a moment, the silence felt like breath held too long. Then she turned to Miranda. You realize this changes everything. They won't be able to feign ignorance anymore. Miranda nodded slowly. That's what I want. Patricia tapped her fingers on the edge of her desk. The DA will likely push for a mediation round before full trial. A final confrontation to negotiate terms, show the strength of our case. She locked eyes with Miranda. Do you want to face them directly in the final mediation? I didn't come to make peace. I came to end it. The room was sterile. White walls, fluorescent lighting, no warmth, no comfort. Just a long mahogany table stretching between two sides that once shared Sunday dinners and birthday candles. Now they sat like strangers, partitioned by silence and a court-appointed monitor. Miranda walked in first, Patricia beside her, legal folder in hand. Across the table sat Gerald and Nancy, older and grayer than she remembered. Nancy clutched a tissue, her eyes already red-rimmed. Gerald's shoulders had caved inward, like someone perpetually bracing for a blow. Ethan slouched between them, arms crossed, the corner of his mouth twisted in practiced indifference. The court monitor adjusted his glasses. This is a voluntary mediation session. Please proceed respectfully. Attorney Patricia Hernandez may begin. Patricia stood. Thank you. My client, Miranda Anderson, is here not for revenge, but for protection. She will now outline her terms for disengagement. Miranda didn't stand. She didn't need to. I don't want revenge, she said, her voice low but unwavering. But I need my son's safety. She slid a single page across the table. Gerald didn't reach for it. Nancy did, hands trembling. The terms are simple, Miranda continued. No contact with Thomas. No social media posts about him. No showing up at his school. No asking about him through extended family. And absolutely no financial endeavors under my name. Nancy's mouth opened. Miranda, it was just a mistake. We didn't mean to. You left my child at a church, Miranda cut in. You told him I didn't want him anymore. We were desperate, Nancy choked out. You turned your back on your family. I protected my child. Miranda replied coldly. Something you failed to do for both your children. Ethan chuckled softly. So now you're a martyr? Patricia didn't flinch. She pulled out a printed email and placed it before Ethan. This is an internal communication between you and your secure coin contact, the closer. You stated, and I quote, I'll milk the family guilt. The sister's tough, but I'll break her. Ethan's smirk faltered. That was taken out of context. Patricia turned to the monitor. It's been verified by federal investigators. We've submitted the digital forensics report to the court. The monitor nodded, making notes. Nancy looked at Ethan. Is this true? Ethan avoided her eyes. I thought I could fix it. Miranda inhaled slowly. The moment had come. She looked straight at her parents. I used to be the daughter of this family, but today I choose to be Thomas's mother, and no one is allowed to hurt him anymore. She stood. Patricia followed. Ethan pushed back from his chair violently. You think this is over? He stormed toward the door, yanking it open, and froze. Two men in dark suits waited outside. One held a badge. Ethan Johnson? The taller one asked. Ethan's expression twisted. You've got to be kidding me. You're under investigation for financial fraud and conspiracy to defraud multiple parties. You'll need to come with us. As the agent stepped forward, the door slowly swung shut behind them, muffling Ethan's string of curses. Miranda didn't look back. When the last mask is removed, only the naked truth remains. The house felt unnervingly still. Not the kind of peaceful quiet Miranda once fought for, but a tense hush, like the world was holding its breath. She sat on the couch with her laptop open, an untouched cup of tea cooling beside her. The headline blinked on screen. Local man tied to nationwide secure coin scam, FBI opens formal investigation. Beneath the title, Ethan's photo. Old graduation shot, still clinging to his golden child image in the public eye, though his eyes already looked hollow back then. Her phone buzzed again. Aunt Rachel. You didn't have to ruin his life like this. Uncle Mike. It's always been about you, hasn't it? You just love drama. Not one asked about Thomas. She locked the screen and exhaled. The weight of being right had never felt so heavy. A knock at the door startled her. For a second, her heart jumped, then calmed when she saw the familiar frame through the peephole. "Hi, Miranda," Aunt Carol said, offering a small wave. "I figured you might not want company, but I came anyway." They sat in the kitchen with fresh coffee, the rain tapping lightly against the windows. Miranda stared into her cup. "I didn't even tell the press anything," she whispered. "I've just been surviving." Carol nodded slowly. "You shouldn't have to explain survival." Miranda looked up, eyes sharp with curiosity. "Why are you here, really?" Carol set down her mug. "Because I've been where you are. Your grandfather, my father, lost thousands to one of Ethan's earlier business stunts. He never recovered. I tried to speak up back then, but the family said I was just jealous. Sound familiar?" Miranda gave a short laugh. It was bitter, but real. "I cut contact 5 years ago," Carol continued. "Didn't even come to Thanksgiving. No one noticed. But I watched. And when I saw your name in the news, I knew you needed someone who believed you." Silence settled again, but this time it wrapped around them like a blanket, not a shroud. Carol reached into her purse. "It's not much," she said, sliding over a check. "And I'm not here to fix everything, but maybe it helps. For Thomas's therapy or legal bills." Miranda stared at the envelope, stunned. I I don't know what to say." "Say nothing, just don't give up." Carol replied gently. "You're the first in this family who's dared to fight back." Later that evening, Miranda sat with Thomas as he pieced together a puzzle on the floor, his concentration deep, his breathing calm. For the first time in weeks, he hadn't asked about Grandma. She looked around her modest home. It wasn't filled with family portraits or festive dinners, but it was safe. It was honest. She had lost blood, but she had found bond. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was Patricia forwarding a message. From Ethan Johnson's lawyer subject. Settlement discussion. Confidential message. Ethan requests to speak with you. Alone. No lawyers, no press. He's prepared to accept all legal conditions. He just wants one final meeting. Miranda stared at the screen. "He wants to talk to me one last time. Accept all conditions. Just meet in private." I agreed to meet Ethan, not because he deserved it, but because I needed a clear ending. The hallway smelled faintly of disinfectant and something older. Maybe regret. A nurse led Miranda through 2 security doors into a small, windowless counseling room. Pale beige walls, a round table, 2 chairs. No distractions. Just the space between them. Ethan was already seated when she walked in. He didn't rise. His hands twisted nervously in his lap, eyes fixed on the scuff marks on the linoleum floor. Miranda sat across from him and said nothing. "I wasn't sure you'd come," he said without looking up. She didn't answer right away. The silence stretched between them, taut but bearable. "I came," she said finally, "because closure matters more than revenge." Ethan gave a shallow nod. I don't want forgiveness. That's not why I asked to meet." "Then why?" Her voice was flat, steady. "I wanted to say sorry," he replied, eyes finally lifting to meet hers. "I know it doesn't fix anything, but I need to say it. Out loud." Miranda folded her hands. "Sorry doesn't erase the pain Thomas is carrying." His shoulders slumped. "I know." She waited. Let him sit in the discomfort. "It got out of control," he began. "The debt, the promises. It started as something I thought I could manage. The coin scheme wasn't just about greed. It felt like my way out. For once, I wanted to win at something. And so you used a child to do it," she said, her tone sharp but not cruel. "My child." Ethan didn't defend himself. "There's no excuse. I let the desperation become a weapon. And I told myself, you'd bounce back. You always do. That's how you've seen me, isn't it? The one who always absorbs the damage so you can keep screwing up." He closed his eyes. shame painting lines deeper into his face. I didn't realize how broken I'd become until I saw Thomas's face on the news. The picture they used. He looked so scared. Miranda softened only slightly. Do you even know how you destroyed this family? I do now, he said quietly. I thought our parents were just enabling me, but I see it differently now. I let them believe I was worth saving while making them part of something that could never be saved. The room fell quiet again. I'm in treatment, Ethan added. For gambling, for dependency, for self-deception too. Miranda leaned forward. I hope it works. Not for me. Not even for them. But for whatever's left of you. He nodded. She reached into her purse and pulled out a small, folded letter. This, she said, placing it on the table, was written by Thomas. He never wanted to send it. But I think it's time you read it. Ethan stared at the envelope, hesitant. He wrote it the night he had his third nightmare in a row, she said. It's not about blame. It's about what it means to a child to be left behind. She stood. I forgive, she said, her voice even and low. Not for you. For me, for Thomas. So we can have peace. Before she could turn to go, Ethan whispered, Do you think he'll ever want to see me again? She paused at the door. That's not my decision. That will be his. Then she left, closing the door behind her, leaving Ethan with the letter, and whatever part of his soul still needed saving. Not everyone deserves to stay in our lives, but everyone can start over. The scent of lavender and fresh paint lingered in the hallway of their new home. Sunlight spilled through the wide living room windows, catching the edge of the canvas Thomas was taping to the wall. He had painted a family of 4, Miranda, himself, Alicia, and James, smiling under a tree with roots stretching deep and wide. Are you sure it's not crooked? He asked, stepping back. Miranda smiled. It's perfect. Thomas had been sleeping through the night for over a week now. The nightmares had faded. He still asked questions from time to time, mostly quiet ones, but the shadow in his eyes was slowly lifting. That afternoon, Miranda joined him at the school auditorium for a student seminar. The topic was, What is a family? Children took turns speaking into a microphone. Some mentioned moms, dads, and siblings. Others named pets, best friends, or even favorite teachers. When it was Thomas's turn, he clutched the mic with both hands. My family is my mom, he began. And Alicia and James. They come to my school plays and make spaghetti just the way I like. And my mom, she makes me feel safe. Miranda's heart clenched, but it was a warm ache. When he returned to his seat, she wrapped her arm around him and kissed his temple. You did amazing, she whispered. That evening, Miranda met Aunt Carol in a quiet corner of the park. Autumn leaves rustled around their bench. I've started the process to name Alicia and James as Thomas's legal guardians, Miranda said, handing Carol a folder. Just in case. Carol nodded. It's smart. You're thinking ahead. Miranda looked out across the pond where Thomas and James were feeding ducks. I used to think leaving the city was the only way to start over. It still could be, Carol said gently. But you've turned rubble into roots here. That matters. Miranda was quiet for a moment. I'm not staying out of fear. I'm staying because I want Thomas to see that healing doesn't always mean running away. Carol reached over and squeezed her hand. Later, back home, Miranda and Thomas curled up on the couch, cocoa mugs in hand. A storm rolled quietly in the distance, but inside the house it was warm. Thomas stared at the fire for a long moment. Then he turned to her, eyes steady. Mom, do you think I should write back to my grandparents? Some apologies don't need to be sent. They just need to be written. Rain tapped gently against the window pane, steady and calm like a heartbeat returning to its natural rhythm. The amber glow of the desk lamp illuminated the scattered papers, casting a soft halo around Miranda as she sat by the window, pen poised above a blank sheet. She exhaled slowly. Dear Mom and Dad. She paused. The words looked formal, cold. She crossed them out and began again. I don't know how to begin this letter, only that I need to write it. Not for you, but for me. She let the ink flow freely, the rain outside blending with the echo of her memories. I used to be a good child. Quiet, careful, always looking for your approval like it was oxygen. I got straight A's. I stayed out of trouble. I watched you applaud Ethan for passing while you barely blinked when I excelled. You told me I was strong, so I wouldn't need your help. That he was weak, so he needed more. And I believed that. I believed it right up until the day you left my child at a church and walked away. She paused, the pen trembling slightly. But this letter isn't to punish you. It's to tell the truth. My truth. She wrote about the silences, the overlooked birthdays, the way they treated Thomas like a bargaining chip instead of a grandson. She wrote about the nights he cried and the way his fingers clutched her sleeve in his sleep. She wrote until her hand ached and the paper bore the small, rippling stain of a single tear. I do not need an apology, she wrote at last. I just need my child to live without fear. When she finished, she folded the letter neatly and slipped it into a box of old memories. Photos, a hospital bracelet from Thomas's birth, one of Robert's sketches. The box clicked shut with a soft finality. Mom? Thomas's voice made her turn. He stood in the doorway in his pajamas, barefoot, holding a drawing in both hands. He approached quietly and placed it on the desk beside her. A house. 4 stick figures in front. Miranda, himself, Alicia, and James. He'd drawn them all holding hands, smiles stretched wide. I think this is my family, he said simply. Miranda pressed a hand to her mouth, overcome. She nodded, unable to speak, and pulled him into her arms. His small body fit perfectly against her chest, a heartbeat wrapped in warmth and trust. A few minutes later, the doorbell rang. Thomas sat back on the couch, distracted by the fireplace. Miranda stood and opened the door. A mailman, damp from the rain, held out a sealed manila envelope. Delivery from the FBI office, he said. She took it in her hands, heart thudding. The letter from the FBI is the final confirmation. Ethan is officially indicted. The envelope sat on the kitchen table, its edges curling slightly from the damp weather. Miranda stood over it, arms folded, her breath steady and calm. No trembling, no dread. Not anymore. Aunt Carol sat nearby, sipping tea, watching with quiet support. The room glowed softly under the afternoon sun, bouncing off white walls and framed photos of Thomas and Alicia, of birthday cakes and laughter. A new chapter already in motion. Miranda opened the envelope. The papers inside rustled like old ghosts. It was all there. Ethan Johnson has been sentenced to 5 years of probation, mandatory psychological counseling, and ordered to make financial restitution to defrauded parties. There was no drama in reading it. No fist-pumping satisfaction. Just quiet. A click of a door gently closing in her mind. Behind the official statement was a handwritten letter, clearly scanned and attached. From Ethan. I don't ask for forgiveness. I just want you to live well. No excuses. No justifications. For once, he didn't ask for anything. That's it, Aunt Carol murmured, placing her cup down with a finality that echoed through the still apartment. It's over. Miranda didn't speak. Instead, she walked over to the balcony, struck a match, and held the corner of Ethan's letter to the flame. The paper curled, blackened, turned to ash. She watched the last corner vanish before closing the lighter with a soft click. Not out of anger. Not out of revenge. Just cleansing. Later, she pulled out her old journal. The one she hadn't dared touch since Thomas had been taken. On the last page, a sentence she had written months ago glared back at her in bold ink. They will never change. She crossed it out. In its place, she wrote, I won't need them to change anymore. She stared at the words for a moment, then closed the journal and slid it back into the drawer. The past was still there, but it no longer weighed her down. A burst of footsteps interrupted her thoughts. "Mom?" Thomas called out, barreling into the room, cheeks pink with excitement. "Our school is having a sharing session. They said parents can come talk about something important in their lives." She turned, amused. "Yeah? Can you tell your story? You know, the one where you were really strong, like superhero strong?" Miranda smiled, slowly, deeply. There was no hesitation in her nod. "Yes, baby, I think I will. Sometimes the bravest thing is to tell your true story, not to complain, but so that no one else has to go through it." The room was warmer than expected. Tiny string lights dangled from the ceiling beams of the school's multi-purpose hall, giving it a soft glow that softened even the harshness of the plastic chairs. Parents whispered gently to one another. Kids fidgeted in their seats. The banner read, "Stories of Courage from Parents with Love." Miranda stood near the side of the stage, palms slightly damp but her breathing calm. Her name had been called. The moment she stepped forward, a hush swept across the room. Thomas sat in the front row, eyes wide and sparkling, his little hand tucked tightly into Alicia's. James sat beside them, beaming like a proud brother. Aunt Carol had shown up too, quietly taking a corner seat in the back. The people who mattered were here. Miranda reached the podium, adjusted the mic. She didn't need notes. She'd lived every word. "I used to think I had to accept everything bad that happened to me," she began, voice steady, "just because the people who caused it were my family." She paused, but I was wrong. The silence in the hall stretched long and respectful. "I want to tell you a story, not because I want pity or revenge, but because there might be someone out there who's still living in silence, still convincing themselves that love must come with conditions." She spoke of Ethan, not as a villain, but as a warning. She spoke of the incident that tore her world apart, of Thomas being picked up from school and left at a church, alone with a milk carton and a note that said she had failed as a daughter. There were audible gasps, and yet she didn't cry. Not this time. "I fought back," she said simply. "I didn't scream or throw punches. I used the law. I used my voice. And above all, I used my love for my son as my anchor." She glanced at Thomas. He gave a small, proud nod. "I tell this story not to accuse anyone, but to say, setting boundaries is how we love our children. Sometimes saying no is the bravest thing a mother can do." Applause didn't break. It erupted. Loud, continuous, and full of something deeper than admiration. Solidarity. A woman rose slowly from the fourth row. Miranda recognized her vaguely as one of the PTA volunteers. Her eyes were red, but her voice was strong. "Thank you," the woman said. "I endured my husband's family's pressure for 10 years. I thought keeping the peace meant being silent, but now I know I have the right to speak up." Others nodded. Someone whispered, "Amen," and someone else whispered, "Finally." After the session, the principal approached her, both hands gently clasped. "We've been trying to start a parent support group for a while now, recovering from family trauma. But we needed someone who could lead it with both strength and grace. Miranda, would you consider being that person?" Miranda looked back at Thomas, then at Alicia, James, and Aunt Carol, all standing there in quiet support. Her son's eyes were bright with pride. She smiled. "I am ready." She stood on that stage not as a victim, but as someone who had faced the unthinkable and lived to tell it. Not to shame, but to shield. What began with betrayal and silence ended with a voice strong enough to protect, to inspire, and to lead. Because justice doesn't always come wrapped in courtroom verdicts. Sometimes it comes in the quiet strength of a mother who refuses to let the past define her child's future. No wall of lies can stand forever against the tide of truth. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and comment your thoughts below. Type 1 if you resonate with this story.